Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's a 420 look at college when I put John Landis's National Lampoon's Animal House against Jesse Dillon's How High. And this is one of the hardest ones that I've ever had to pick because both of these movies are fucking hilarious and they're both classics in their own right. So let's just dive right on into the nit and the picky. First up, we have John Landis's National Lampoon's Animal House. And of course, this movie is a motherfucking classic. You know, as far as John Belushi, Tim Matheson, Kevin Bacon, and Karen Allen, and a few others. But the film itself, you know, there's not really any basic plot to it. You know, it's really just about, you know, the kind of dueling societies. You got the uptight, you know, frats, and then you got the party animal fucking just degenerate Delta House. And of course, like, you know, Delta House is the kind of one you want to be in. You know, you don't really want to be, you know, this movie's the reason that I don't, like, never thought about getting into a frat. You know, you see that bullshit with her paddling them and shit, and maybe I go into Delta, you know, you just get fucked up and, you know, have fun. But you've also got the dean, played brilliantly by John Vernon, who, you know, he put him on double secret probation. He's trying to get him out. They're kind of an embarrassment and shit. So it's really just them not only fucking with the dean, but fucking with, you know, the other fucking fraternity that's all kinds of shit, you know. And there's a lot of great gags. Of course, you know, John Belushi, one of the greatest, like, comedians of all time, especially physicality wise, you know, because for a big dude, this motherfucker was very agile, like moving around, doing some crazy shit. You know, when he falls off that ladder, when he's peeping those sorority chicks, that's fucking hilarious. And of course, the fucking I'm a zit, get it, fucking brilliant food fight, all that shit. But you know, and they do all kinds of, they throw that fucking toga party, he breaks that fucking guitar, you know. It's just there's a lot of shit in this movie that is just fucking hilarious, you know. And it's also like real shit. The film itself takes place in 1962 at a fictional college called Faber. And, you know, the thing about it is, like, John Landis is one of the greatest comedy directors of all time, you know, and this was like one of his first, like, real classics and stuff, you know, one of the two that he did with John Belushi, the other one being the Blues Brothers, which will come after this one. And, you know, the movie itself is just so, like, everybody's playing their parts perfectly. You know, you got like the fucking, like, that Niedermeyer dude, that guy, whoever's playing that guy is like perfect at being a snake. Even that Marmalade motherfucker, like, they're all just so uptight, stiff upper lip motherfuckers. This is one of the few roles where, like, Kevin Bacon is not really like a psycho and shit, but even though he kind of like is falling in with that fascist type fucking crowd and stuff, you know. But the biggest thing, the thing that really just makes Animal House special is that fucking climax. That ending parade sequence is one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. The gags they pull off in that fucking parade sequence is just bar none. Like, it's just fucking leading that band into the alley. You know, the fucking Playboy bunny going through the kids' windows, like, thank you, God, you know, but, you know, just crashing into all this shit. And then you got fucking John Belushi doing some Errol Flynn type shit, you know, like I said, very agile for a bigger dude, you know. The physicality that dude pulled off was pretty fucking incredible. And, you know, it's just, and then the fucking postscripts for, like, what happens to them after this shit is even fucking funnier. So, like, the movie just keeps getting better and better, you know, the fucking sight gags and all the fucked up shit that they do, you know. Like, this is like the movie that set the standard for, like, all college movie frat boy fucking type shit. And, you know, it really has not been topped, but there have been shit that's come close. And really the closest one to ever even, like, touch the greatness of Animal House, that's Jesse Dillon's How High, which stars Method Man and Redman. And they, you know, two guys that they meet randomly, you know. The thing about How High, this is like the ultimate stoner comedy. This might be the greatest stoner comedy. You know, these two guys, they end up meeting each other, you know, because they need fucking, one's got the weed, one's got the blunt, and, you know, they're trying to get high as fuck to get them college entrance exams and shit. And what happens is Method Man's friend dies, and he puts the ashes in the plant, and they grow the plant, and they're able to smoke the plant, and when they smoke the plant, they see Ivory, and he gives them all the answers to the questions and shit, so they are able to fucking get in any school, and then they end up getting into Harvard. The film itself like boasts some fucking great character actors like Fred Willard, Oba Babatunde, and of course Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell, and fucking Essence Atkins, who's fucking fine as hell. Even Jeffrey Jones is in it, and a few other motherfuckers and shit. But the film itself, this is one of the funniest fucking movies. If we're looking at a laughs per minute scale, this probably beats Animal House by a nose, because like there's so many, it's so quotable too. It's just like, this is one of those great like stoner duos too, and it really like honestly kind of accurately portrays stoners. It's like, fucking way they just white wall fucking rooms and shit. It's just crazy fucking shit. And there's like a lot of great gags too, like the fuck they wreck that dude's bicycle and shit, and because even that dude, the fucking campus security guard, that motherfucker is something else. It's just a wild time of a fucking movie, man. It'll have you fucking laughing like crazy. But the thing of it is though, like this, I said, where it gets down to the fucking nit and the picky, because like I said, greatest stoner comedy of all time, but. I like watching fucking Red Man with his mom, played brilliantly by Anna Maria Horsford, who's all like, she was always like the mom in the movies and shit, but she's fine as hell, and MILF, if you will, but they just do all kinds of shit, and then when the fucking security guard steals the plant, and then they got to try to actually like study and shit, and they, the thing about it is though, that climax is very anticlimactic. Like there's crazy shit that goes down, but it doesn't live up to the rest of the movie. Not in the sense of like how Animal House like keeps getting better and better. It's like by the time like How High ends, you remember how great it was earlier in the film, because that ending just kind of is a little lame. So like, as it usually does with the 70s versus the 90s, it comes down to like, what is the better movie? What has the better ending? And it's got to be Animal House, because this one pains me. I wish I could give it to both movies, like we'll go on like a tittage scale, but more titties in Animal House, but there's nice titties in How High in the very beginning, actually. And both soundtracks are fucking killer as hell, They each get a band for their party, the Animal House has that toga party, got Otis Day and the Knights playing. How High, they have like just the wildest fucking Halloween party, and they end up having Cypress Hill there, and also Mike Epps as the pimp in How High. That motherfucker is just hilarious, like the spot on fucking funny, and those like shit like that. As I said, it's pretty neck and neck, because like you got shit like that. And every supporting character is fucking funny. There's not a moment in this movie that's not fucking funny, and even with the uptight dean played by Oba Babatunde, they get him strung out fucking on weed brownies and shit, and like I said, it's a fucking stoner classic. But Animal House is more of a classic. I mean, you even got Donald Sutherland in a small sweater and shit, showing his ass for no reason. And then, as this sad, sarcastic fucking professor. But then again, you got Spalding Gray and How High as a fucking Black History professor. And that sequence is fucking funny. Just nonstop funny. But also at the end of the day, too, I would say John Landis is a better director than Jesse Dillon. Because, like, How High is, like, the only classic that Jesse Dillon ever did. John Landis, this was, like, the first of many classics that he did. So as much as I hate to make a decision on this one, because I love both of these movies, the whole point of this shit is to find out which one is the better movie, and I would say it is Animal House. 70s win this round. For anybody keeping score, that is 54 to 45. 70s are up by 9. 90s are getting smoked like a motherfucker. Smoke more than motherfuckers in How High. But like I said, This one was hard. There's getting more into these that are like both movies are good, but only one can win, and that one is Animal House because like for all the great shit in How High, they did not have that fucking parade sequence that Animal House has, and them fucking postscripts too. That is like Animal House might be a perfect movie because it does everything that it needs to do. Everybody's playing their part to the hilt, and they do the same thing in How High. It's like how do you end something just so fucking batshit crazy? Animal House found a way. That's why it won the round. So 54-45. If I've said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. This is a rough draft to a doctoral thesis. All this shit's open for discussion. Stay tuned for more of these. We got a long way to go, and we're going to find out which decade is better, the better one for movies, the 70s or the 90s. Right now, it's looking like I was right because the 90s are getting smoked by the 70s. They're up by 9. So let's see what happens.